حي على الفلاح.
For over 14 centuries, Muslims have dreamed of restoring a perfect ummah, a single community united under one flag, one ruler and one divine law. They call it the Caliphate. But what if I told you that this perfect ummah never truly existed? What if this dream is not history, but a mirage, a fantasy born out of longing, power struggles, and misinterpretation of sacred texts? To understand this, we must return to where it all began. The Prophet Muhammad, the founder of Islam. In the year 622, Muhammad and his followers fled persecution in Mecca and migrated to the oasis city of Yathrib, later renamed Medina. There he built something revolutionary for its time, a religious community, a society based not on tribal loyalty or bloodline, but on faith. Muslims, Jews, and even pagan tribes entered into agreements under what we now call the Constitution of Medina, promising cooperation and mutual defense. For the first time, Arabia had a community built on shared values instead of tribal revenge. But here is the truth rarely spoken. That community was possible only because Muhammad was alive. He was a prophet, a man Muslims believed spoke directly to God, the interpreter of divine revelation. When disputes arose, people could ask the prophet himself, who had authority no other human could claim. That authority ended the moment Muhammad died. When he passed away in 632, he left no written constitution for governance, no named successor, no instructions on how leadership should continue. The Quran gave moral guidance, but no detailed political structure. And so, panic and division erupted. Who would lead? How would the community survive without a prophet? In a hurried meeting at a place called Saqifa, a group of companions appointed Abu Bakr as Khalifa Rasul Allah, successor to the Messenger of God. It was an improvised solution to a political crisis, not a divine revelation. This moment birthed the idea of the Caliphate, an institution Muhammad himself never created and perhaps never envisioned. Yet Muslims today often believe the Caliphate existed exactly as extremists describe it: perfect, unified, divinely ordained. That belief is false. The first Caliphate, under Abu Bakr and his successors Umar, Uthman, and Ali, the so-called rightly guided caliphs, was plagued by internal dissent. Some tribes refused to obey Abu Bakr, seeing him as a political figure, not a spiritual leader. This sparked the apostasy wars, where Muslims fought Muslims to force allegiance. Later, Caliphs Umar and Uthman were assassinated. Ali, Muhammad's cousin and son-in-law, was killed during civil war. Muslims who once prayed side by side were now killing each other on battlefields, and from that bloodshed emerged the first radical sect in Islamic history, the Kharijites, extremists who believed anyone they disagreed with deserved death. These were not signs of a perfect ummah. They were signs of collapse. Yet, even after this collapse, Muslim leaders kept trying to recreate what had already failed. The Umayyad dynasty took power through force, turning leadership into a hereditary monarchy. Many Muslims rejected them as illegitimate, leading to revolts and more bloodshed. The Abbasids overthrew the Umayyads in an even bloodier coup, slaughtering almost the entire Umayyad family. The Abbasids promised a return to justice but their empire fragmented within decades. Rival caliphates and sultanates sprang up across North Africa, Persia and Spain. The Fatimids in Egypt, the Almohads in Morocco, the Umayyads of Cordoba, and countless other emirates all claimed to represent the true vision of Islam, yet all fought each other for power. And it didn't end there. Even the Ottoman Empire, which held the Caliph title from 1517 until its abolition in 1924, never united all Muslims under one rule. Their control was regional, their politics imperial. They fought Shia Persia, crushed Arab revolts, and ruled through force rather than religious harmony. There was never a single, peaceful, universal Islamic caliphate uniting the entire Ummah. What we call the Golden Age was never an age of perfect unity. It was an age of competing dynasties, assassinations, sectarian wars, and constant political intrigue. Some went even further, using force to rebuild it. In 930 CE, the Qarmatians, a radical Ismaili sect led by Abu Tahir al-Janabi, stormed Mecca during the pilgrimage season. They massacred pilgrims, desecrated the Kaaba, and carried off the sacred black stone, mocking its sanctity and even reportedly desecrating it. They built their own utopian ummah, boasting tax-free policies and interest-free loans. But even this collapsed within decades, because what made Muhammad's community function wasn't economics or law. It was prophetic leadership. Without a prophet, no structure can hold. Nearly 900 years later, another bold attempt rose: the alliance between Muhammad ibn Abd al-Wahhab, founder of Wahhabism, and the House of Saud. Their goal? To return Islam to its original purity, exactly as they believed Muhammad lived it. They destroyed shrines, outlawed religious practices they saw as innovations, and established strict rule based on early Islamic law. This partnership birthed modern Saudi Arabia, and for a time it seemed like the closest thing to the Prophet's Ummah. But even this vision cracked under the weight of modern life. Oil wealth, global politics, and technology forced compromise. The Wahhabi clerics, once powerful enough to challenge kings, became controlled by them. State employees delivering religious legitimacy on command. What began as a call to recreate Muhammad's pure ummah ended up as just another kingdom, negotiating with the modern world to survive. The lesson of history is clear. Every attempt to restore Muhammad's original ummah, whether through force, utopian economic models, or strict religious revival, has failed. Why? Because what made the original ummah work was not its economic policies, its lack of taxes, or its social rules. It was the presence of a prophet, Muhammad, whose unique spiritual authority unified hearts and settled disputes with divine legitimacy. Without a prophet, no one, not a caliph, not a sheikh, not a king, can recreate that harmony. Every attempt ends in compromise, collapse, or corruption. So, why does the myth of a perfect ummah persist? Why do modern Muslims and extremists still dream of bringing it back? The answer lies in how Islamic history was recorded and retold. Over centuries, scholars and rulers romanticized the early years of Islam. Quranic verses about unity were interpreted as commands to create one political state. Hadiths about obeying Muslim leaders were extended beyond their context. A vision of a lost golden age emerged, an idealized story told in sermons, classrooms, and literature. It became so deeply ingrained that generations accepted it as fact, never questioning whether it had ever really existed. And today, this myth is dangerous. Groups like Al-Qaeda, ISIS, and Boko Haram feed on it. They tell Muslims, "Your suffering is because the caliphate was lost. Join us, fight, kill, and die to restore it." Young people, angry or disillusioned, believe this story and pick up guns. But what are they actually trying to restore? Not history, not Muhammad's community. They are trying to build a dream that never existed, based on selective memory and political ambition. Here's the reality. Islamic scholars often fail to admit the first and only Islamic Ummah under Muhammad collapsed the moment he died because its survival depended on a prophet's direct spiritual authority. After him, leadership became political, not prophetic, and injustice followed. The very first caliphs faced rebellion, assassination, and civil war. Every attempt to bring back a perfect Ummah, whether by the Rashidun, the Umayyads, the Abbasids, the Fatimids, or the Ottomans, ended in failure because what they were trying to recreate was an illusion, a mirage in the desert. For Muslims to truly recreate Muhammad's Ummah, they would need a prophet, because only a prophet can hear from God, interpret divine law perfectly, and administer ultimate justice. And Muhammad is gone. He was the last prophet. Without him, any attempt at a perfect prophetic community will always fail. The painful truth is this. The so-called perfect Ummah is a bedtime story told for so long that entire generations believed it was real. But when we remove the religious lens and study history honestly, it becomes clear. There was never a perfect caliphate. There was never a perfect Ummah beyond Muhammad's lifetime. That was a moment in time that ended when he died, and nothing since has come close. The real legacy of Islam is not one empire or one ruler. It is the rich cultural, scientific, and moral contributions of Muslims across diverse lands and times, achievements made not because of one single caliphate, but because of countless individuals and communities. Islam's greatness does not depend on recreating an illusion. It depends on living justly and wisely in whatever context we find ourselves. History is not what we wish it to be. It is what it truly was. And the sooner we face that truth, the sooner we can stop chasing a mirage and start building societies that are just, peaceful, and real. Because the perfect Ummah ended with Muhammad. Every attempt to recreate it has failed, and every attempt in the future will fail for the same reason. No one can replace a prophet. This is not an attack on faith. It is an invitation to embrace truth, and truth, when embraced, can finally set us free. The idea of a perfect Ummah, pure, united, divinely guided, is perhaps the most captivating illusion in Islamic political memory. But history has shown us that it was never real, only a prophetic moment that ended the day Muhammad died. From the Rashidun to the Ottomans, from the Wahhabist Saudi kingdom to the forgotten utopias of zealots who broke Mecca's stones and proclaimed new beginnings, all of them, every one of them, have failed, because the prophet is gone. And without a prophet, there is no divine arbitration, only interpretation, and interpretation breeds division. The mirage of the perfect Ummah lives on, in speeches, in schoolbooks, in flags. But in reality, every attempt to build it becomes a political project, a human project, soaked in ambition, blood, and disillusionment. If this documentary challenged what you've been told, good. That's what truth does. It disturbs comfort. If you found this video insightful, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone who still believes myths are facts. Click like, leave a comment, and tell us what struck you the most. And of course, subscribe to Black Page Research, where truth is not filtered and history is told unchained. Black Page Research, rewriting what was written in chains.